I still remember that day as if it were etched in blood across my heart. In the first 100 seconds, my world unraveled. I uncovered undeniable proof that my wife, the woman I trusted with every piece of my soul, had been living a double life, a secret second family hidden behind carefully locked doors. The evidence was all there in stark, uncompromising detail. Photographs, hidden letters, and messages that painted a picture of a life she had built without me. When I confronted her with the truth, she vanished into thin air, leaving me to drown in betrayal and the shattered remnants of a once perfect life. For nearly 12 years, I had believed that our marriage was built on a foundation of honesty, mutual respect, and a shared dream of a future that we had planned together. My wife, Laura, and I had weathered the storms of life side by side, raising 2 wonderful children, celebrating birthdays and anniversaries with laughter, and building a home filled with memories. I trusted her implicitly. I never imagined that behind the warm smile and soft words of love, she harbored a secret that would eventually devastate everything I held dear. It all began with a subtle shift in her behavior. At first, I noticed nothing more than the occasional late night at the office, the furtive glances at her phone, or her sudden need for privacy that I chalked up to the pressures of a busy career. But gradually the discrepancies piled up. There were days when she would slip out in the early morning without a word, only to return with vague explanations that left more questions than answers. My intuition, which I had long ignored in the name of trust, began to murmur warnings that something wasn't right. One evening as I was tidying up after dinner, I found a receipt tucked into a drawer, a receipt for a family portrait session at a studio I had never heard her mention. I dismissed it at first, assuming it was some leftover from an errand. But as I continued my routine little by little, I discovered more anomalies. An unfamiliar phone number in her contacts, a series of cryptic text messages that she quickly deleted, and a hidden envelope in our closet containing letters addressed to someone with a different last name. Each discovery sent a ripple of dread through me. The final, shattering blow came when I was sorting through some old boxes in our attic, a space we had once shared for family memories, and I found a small, locked diary. Curiosity gnawed at me, and despite the pang of guilt that accompanied every secret I unearthed, I managed to pry it open when she was away. Inside, the diary spilled out a narrative that I could scarcely believe. Entries detailing not only intimate moments with another man but also references to a separate life, a family, a home, and even children I had never known existed. The words on those pages were raw, painful, and unmistakably real. Armed with this damning evidence, I confronted Laura that night. The confrontation took place in our once safe living room, now transformed into a cold arena where every heartbeat thundered with betrayal. I laid out the diary, the letters, the texts, the tangible proof of a life she had meticulously hidden from me. I demanded answers, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "How could you?" I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "How could you build a life with another and leave me in the dark?" For a few excruciating minutes, all I received was silence. Until, as if the weight of my questions had become too much for her to bear, she simply stood, brushed past me, and disappeared. That moment of vanishing was like a knife twisting in my chest. One moment she was there, frozen in the final haunted silence of our conversation, and the next she was gone. I searched the house, calling out her name into the emptiness, but the only answer was the echo of my own voice. The realization that she had intentionally walked away, leaving behind nothing but shattered promises and the remnants of our shared past, was more painful than any physical injury I had ever sustained. In the days and weeks that followed, I found myself adrift in a sea of questions and heartbreak. I spent countless sleepless nights poring over the diary and the hidden letters, desperate to understand how the woman I had once loved could have led such a double life. I revisited every memory, from the quiet dinners to the whispered secrets exchanged in the dark, each one now a painful reminder that nothing was as it seemed. My children too began to sense the change. Their innocent questions, "Where's Mommy? When is she coming back?" pierced my soul, and I struggled to weave stories that could ease their confusion while my own heart shattered a little more with each passing day. I confronted my own reflection in the mirror, searching for answers in the eyes that stared back at me. How had I missed the signs? Was I so blinded by love that I had refused to see the truth? The guilt gnawed at me relentlessly. I had built a life with Laura, sacrificing dreams and savings for the promise of a future together. And now, that future was nothing more than a cruel illusion, a secret second family that she had built behind my back, and then, when exposed, she had vanished without a trace. The betrayal forced me to re-examine every aspect of my existence. I found solace in therapy, where I poured out my grief and struggled to reclaim my sense of self. Each session was a painful reminder that trust, once broken, takes years, if not a lifetime, to rebuild. I began to document my thoughts in a battered journal, each entry a raw confession of my agony and a tentative step toward understanding. I would write late into the night, the flickering light of my desk lamp casting long shadows on the pages filled with my tears and reflections. In those solitary moments, I started to see that perhaps the betrayal, as devastating as it was, held the potential for a rebirth, a chance to redefine my identity beyond the confines of a love that had been shattered. I also turned to work as a refuge, burying myself in projects and deadlines that demanded my attention and offered a temporary escape from the relentless pain at home. The office, once a place of routine and stability, became a battlefield where I fought to reclaim my dignity, each completed task a small victory against the dark tide of betrayal. Colleagues whispered sympathies that I could barely bring myself to acknowledge, and every congratulatory note on my performance was a bittersweet reminder of what I had lost. Yet, even as I navigated the labyrinth of professional responsibilities and personal healing, the memories of that day, the day I discovered her secret second family and confronted the unbearable truth, remained ever present. I would often find myself wandering through our empty house, each room echoing with the ghost of a promise broken. I recalled the laughter of our happier times, the dreams we had spun together late into the night, and I wondered how something so beautiful could have been reduced to so much hurt. That revelation, the shocking discovery of a life built in secret, became a turning point. It forced me to confront the fragility of trust and the complexity of love. I began to understand that sometimes the people we love are not as transparent as we wish them to be, and that behind every facade lies a deeper, often hidden truth. And while the pain of that knowledge cut me deeply, it also set me on a path of introspection, a journey to rediscover who I was when I was not defined by betrayal. As the weeks turned into months, I resolved that I would not let her disappearance be the final word in our story. I embarked on a mission, not to chase her, but to understand the full scope of the life she had created without me. I gathered every scrap of evidence, the diary, the letters, the hidden photographs, and I began to piece together the fragments of a puzzle that revealed a secret second family, complete with a new home, a set of children she had never mentioned, and a life that was as foreign to me as a stranger's dream. In the quiet of my study, as the autumn wind rattled the window panes and the scent of fallen leaves filled the air, I vowed that I would find answers. Not just for my own sake but for the sake of our children who deserved to know the truth. I knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with heartache and painful revelations, but I also recognized that healing begins with understanding. I set out to uncover every hidden detail, every piece of evidence that might explain how the woman I loved had so completely reinvented herself behind my back. I spent days visiting places I once shared with her, our favorite cafe, the park where we had picnicked, and even the small neighborhood church where we had celebrated milestones. In each familiar location, I searched for traces of her new life, a hint of the secrets she had so carefully concealed. I spoke quietly with neighbors, friends, anyone who might have seen a glimpse of this new reality. And slowly the truth emerged. Laura had not only built a secret second family, she had done so with a determination that seemed to come from deep within. A resolve to live a life she felt was more authentic, even if it meant abandoning everything we had shared. The revelation was a bitter pill to swallow. The more I learned, the more I realized that I had been living a lie. Not just because she had deceived me but because I had convinced myself that our love was unassailable. That discovery forced me to face my own vulnerabilities, to acknowledge that I too had my share of flaws and blind spots. It was a painful lesson, but one that slowly began to pave the way for healing. Now, as I sit in the silence of our once shared home, clutching the remnants of a life that is no longer mine, I realize that the journey toward understanding and forgiveness is only just beginning. The betrayal has left deep scars that may never fully fade, yet I also sense that every ending is a prelude to a new beginning. I have resolved to rebuild my life, to rediscover my worth beyond the confines of a shattered trust, and to protect the future of our children with every ounce of strength I possess. This is where part 1 ends, a chapter of unimaginable betrayal, of a secret second family that tore our lives apart, and of a night when after exposing the truth she vanished into the ether. The path ahead is uncertain and fraught with challenges, but I have begun the long, arduous journey toward reclaiming my identity and forging a new future, one truth at a time. I woke one cold morning to a world that no longer resembled the one I once knew. The echoes of that night, the night I discovered Laura's secret second family and confronted her with undeniable proof, still haunted me. In the immediate aftermath of her vanishing, I felt as if time had fractured into 1,000 bitter shards, each reflecting a life that once brimmed with love and trust, now marred by betrayal. But as the weeks turned into months, the overwhelming despair began to give way to a slow, deliberate resolve. I had to reclaim my life for myself and for our children. For nearly a year after she disappeared, I wandered through days shrouded in grief. I found myself sifting through our old photos and mementos, trying desperately to salvage the memories of a marriage that, in hindsight, seemed built on fragile promises. I would pace the silent halls of our home, once filled with our laughter and our shared dreams, and wonder how I had been so blinded by love. Every evening, I poured my heart into a battered journal, each word a cathartic release of pain and confusion. I questioned every sign I had ignored, every subtle shift in her behavior that I had mistaken for stress or fatigue. The deeper I delved, the more I realized that Laura had led a double life, one meticulously hidden behind locked drawers and coded diaries. And when I exposed her secret, she vanished, leaving behind a void that threatened to consume me. In those long, lonely nights, I sought solace in therapy. Dr. Ramirez, a calm presence amid my inner turmoil, gently helped me unravel the intricate tapestry of emotions that now defined my every day. "Grief," she said one afternoon as rain tapped a steady rhythm against her office window, "is not something you overcome overnight. It's a journey, one that teaches you who you truly are." Her words resonated deeply, urging me to face my pain head-on, rather than let it fester. I learned that while betrayal could break the spirit, it could also forge an inner strength I never knew I possessed. Determined to rebuild a life for myself and, most importantly, for our children, I began to channel my anguish into action. I restructured our finances, carefully auditing every account and expense to ensure that nothing was left to chance. The financial betrayal was as painful as the emotional one. A reminder that Laura had not only shattered our trust but had also eroded the future we had planned together. Each corrected ledger entry was a small victory, a silent assertion that I would not let her actions define our family's destiny. Work became both a refuge and a battleground. Immersing myself in projects and deadlines, I sought to bury the relentless ache of loss in the structured chaos of corporate life. Every completed report, every successfully managed crisis, was a quiet testament to my resilience. My colleagues, sensing the storm beneath my calm exterior, offered support in small gestures. A kind word here, a discreet pat on the back there. Slowly, I began to rebuild my professional identity, transforming the betrayal into fuel for growth. It was not a choice made out of bitterness, but one born from necessity. I had to be strong for our children. Outside of work, I turned to the simple rituals that once brought me peace. Early morning runs along quiet, dew-dappled streets became a time of quiet reflection. With each stride, the rhythmic pounding of my feet seemed to push away the memories of that fateful day. The crisp air and the promise of a new sunrise whispered that every ending, however painful, held the seed of a new beginning. I also rediscovered my love for painting, a hobby long abandoned in the whirlwind of married life. In the solitude of my makeshift studio, every brushstroke became an act of defiance against the darkness that had threatened to engulf me. I painted what I could not say, the raw pain of betrayal, the icy chill of loneliness, and eventually the tentative colors of hope. Yet even as I rebuilt, I could not escape the questions that haunted me. Why had she built another life behind my back? What had driven her to abandon everything we had built? In quiet moments, I revisited our past, our shared dreams, the promises whispered on lazy summer nights, and I began to see that our love, while genuine, had been fragile and perhaps incomplete. I spoke with close friends and even reached out to acquaintances who had known Laura well. Their accounts were a mix of shock and sorrow, tinted with a hint of understanding that sometimes people become lost in their own desires and fail to see the collateral damage of their choices. Slowly, I came to realize that Laura's secret second family was not simply an act of malice, but a manifestation of a deeper emptiness she had been unable or unwilling to confront. I learned that, behind her dazzling exterior, there was a woman haunted by unmet needs and unspoken fears. A woman who, in her quest for validation, had constructed an entirely separate world. This understanding did not ease my pain, but it allowed me to see that her betrayal was as much about her internal struggle as it was about my shortcomings. And while I would never fully excuse her actions, this insight became a stepping stone on my path to healing. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves danced in the wind outside our now quiet home, I made a decision. I would not allow the specter of Laura's betrayal to imprison me forever. I gathered the fragments of my shattered life, our old photographs, the letters we once exchanged in moments of intimacy, and the journal entries that bore witness to both our joy and our sorrow, and I organized them into a new narrative. This was not an act of nostalgia, but a deliberate effort to reclaim my identity from the ruins of our past. I began a scrapbook titled Our Story Reimagined, a tribute to the love that once was and a promise to myself that I would build a future defined by resilience and hope. At the same time, I prioritized the well-being of our children. Their bright eyes and gentle laughter were constant reminders that, despite everything, life continued. I explained to them, in gentle words they could understand, that sometimes grown-ups make decisions that hurt, but that we would always stick together as a family. Their unwavering trust and love gave me strength on days when my own heart felt too heavy to bear. Then, nearly a year after that shattering day, the unexpected happened, a call from Laura. In a voice trembling with regret and desperation, she confessed that she had vanished because she could no longer bear the weight of her double life. Her secret world had crumbled and she was lost, seeking refuge in anonymity. "I'm so sorry," she said, as if the words could somehow undo the years of deceit. "I had to disappear. I didn't know how else to face the truth." Her apology, though laced with remorse, reopened old wounds. I listened in silence, feeling a complex tide of emotions surge through me. Part of me longed for closure, for an explanation that would help me understand the choices she made. Yet, another part of me, battered and hardened by loss, recoiled at the thought of reconciliation. In that moment, I realized that forgiveness was not a demand I owed her, it was a gift I owed myself. I did not have to let her re-enter my life to find healing. Instead, I chose to use her final act as the catalyst to move forward. I thanked her for the apology and then I ended the call. I knew that my journey to redemption and self-discovery would continue without her shadow looming over every step. In the months that followed, I dedicated myself fully to rebuilding my life on my own terms. I poured my energy into my work, gradually ascending in my career, a quiet testament to my resilience. I reconnected with old friends, forged new relationships, and embraced the simple joys that had once seemed lost forever. I learned that true strength comes not from denying the past, but from accepting it and transforming it into a foundation for a better future. Now, as I sit on the porch of my modest home, watching the sun dip below the horizon in a riot of colors, I feel a quiet, resolute peace. The scars of betrayal remain, each one a reminder of the pain I endured and the lessons I learned. I have come to understand that while love can break you, it can also teach you to rise, stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. I have rebuilt my life for myself and for the children who depend on me, and I will never again allow the actions of another to define my worth. This is my truth, a journey from the depths of betrayal to the heights of self-redemption. My wife's secret double life and her vanishing act once threatened to destroy me, but through the darkness I found a spark of light, a resolve to reclaim my identity and forge a future filled with hope and genuine love. Every sunrise is now a promise of renewal, a reminder that even the most shattered dreams can be pieced together to form a mosaic of strength and resilience. I have learned that true healing is a journey of self-discovery, a relentless, courageous quest to rise above betrayal, rebuild what has been lost, and embrace each new day with an unwavering belief in the power of hope and renewal.